Have you ever noticed that two cars with the exact same engine built in the same factory somehow end up with completely different oil recommendations depending on where they're sold? It sounds harmless at first, a small detail buried in the owner's manual, yet this one difference can be the dividing line between a healthy engine and years of premature wear. In the United States, the manuals often insist on 0W-20 only. But take that same engine to Europe, Japan, or Australia, and suddenly the guide recommends 5W30 or even 10W30. So why would the same piece of machinery ask for a different lifeblood depending on where it's parked? Some say it's purely climate, others say emissions. A few claim modern engines are simply built around thinner oils. But the truth is more layered, more political, and more engineering-driven than most owners ever realize. By the time we reach the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why this split exists, and whether choosing the wrong viscosity is quietly harming your engine without you ever noticing. Let's begin with a real-world example that catches almost everyone off guard. Think about the Toyota 2.5-liter four-cylinder found in the Camry, RAV4, and several Lexus models. In the US, Toyota doesn't give you a choice. The book says to use 0W20 full synthetic and nothing else. But in Japan, the same engine comfortably runs on 5W30. In Australia, many dealers pour 10W30 as their standard. And if we shift to Honda's popular 1.5-liter turbo, the situation becomes even more confusing. American owners are told to use 0W20. Meanwhile, the UK manual for the same L15 turbo specifies 5W30. Same turbocharger, same bearings, same cooling strategy. So why the contradiction? Is Europe really colder? Is Japan driving differently? Or is the reasoning hiding somewhere deeper, somewhere in the intersection of engineering needs and regulatory pressure? The reality isn't just climate, because if that were true, Florida and Finland would have opposite oil charts, and they don't. The real story begins with how governments measure fuel efficiency, and how car companies have learned to play by those rules. In the United States, automakers operate under the tight grip of corporate average fuel economy standards. Every model they sell contributes to a fleet-wide MPG requirement. Miss the target by even a fractional amount, and the penalties stack up fast. This forces manufacturers into a delicate balancing act: protect the engine, meet the emissions rules, and avoid massive fines. One of the easiest ways to boost measured efficiency is by reducing internal friction, and the quickest way to reduce friction is by using a thinner oil. When a vehicle is sent to the EPA for certification, that tiny reduction in drag from using 0W20 instead of 5W30 can raise official fuel economy by half a mile per gallon or more. That little bump can determine whether a company pays millions in penalties or slides safely under the limit. But here's the engineering trade-off. Thinner oil may help on the test bench, but it doesn't always help under heavy load or high temperatures. That's why the same engines outside the US are still given thicker oils, not because the engines are different, but because their regulatory pressures are. One retired Toyota engineer put it bluntly in an interview years ago: the oil grade isn't always an engineering decision, sometimes it's a documentation decision. Before diving deeper, let's break down what those viscosity numbers actually mean, because the labels confuse even experienced car owners. When you see 0W20, that 0W describes the oil's behavior during a cold start. The lower the number, the easier it flows when the engine is cold. The 20 describes its viscosity once the engine is hot, typically around 100 degrees C. In contrast, 5W30 behaves a little thicker during cold starts and significantly thicker under operating temperatures. What that means in practice is that 5W30 maintains a stronger, more resilient oil film when the engine is under stress, during long drives, towing, hot weather, or high-speed cruising. So when the same engine receives different recommendations, it's not because the mechanical tolerances suddenly change across continents. It's because their priorities do. In some regions, cold start economy matters most. In others, long-term durability wins. Of course, we also have to consider how engines themselves are built. Modern engines are designed with incredibly tight tolerances. Pistons, bearings, and camshaft components sit within extremely small clearances to reduce pumping losses and allow thinner oils to function properly. That's a major leak from older engines, which relied on thicker viscosities to fill wider gaps and maintain stability under load. But even with modern precision engineering, engines don't remain the same forever. As mileage increases, those careful tolerances slowly widen. Metal wears, heat cycles take their toll. An engine that was perfect for 0W-20 at 5,000 miles may benefit from 5W-30 at 100,000 miles simply because the internal spacing has changed. That's why mechanics with decades of experience routinely advise older cars to move up a grade. It's not superstition, it's mechanical reality. As one veteran technician once said on an industry forum, engines change with age. Your oil should change with them. Temperature also plays much bigger a role than most people think. Many assume that 0W-20 is chosen for America because it's a cold country. But if that were true, the hot southern states would require different recommendations than the cold northern ones, and they don't. In fact, large parts of the US run hotter summers than Germany or Japan, yet those countries still recommend thicker oils for the same engines. In places like Arizona, Texas, and Florida, engine oil temperatures frequently climb past 240 degrees F during daily driving. Under those conditions, thinner oils like 0W-20 can shear down more quickly, losing some of their protective viscosity long before the recommended change interval. Independent tests from oil labs and third-party reviewers consistently reveal that many 0W-20 oils lose 10 to 15% of their viscosity after several thousand miles in hot climates. Meanwhile, a quality 5W-30 maintains its structure far longer. This doesn't make 0W-20 a poor oil, it simply means it's more sensitive to heat and driving style. That's exactly why manufacturers recommend thicker oils for the same engines in regions like Australia, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East. In those markets, fuel economy regulations loosen and durability takes priority. An interesting twist comes from the certification process itself. When a manufacturer gets an engine approved for sale, the oil grade becomes part of the submission package. Changing it later isn't as simple as updating the owner's manual. It requires retesting and recertifying the entire vehicle. That's expensive and time-consuming, so most companies simply stick with the original grade for the life of the model, even if engineers internally prefer something different for certain climates. This is why many manuals include subtle wording such as 5W-30 may be used if 0W-20 is unavailable. It's an indirect way of acknowledging that thicker oils are perfectly acceptable without contradicting the regulatory paperwork. Now, rather than rely on theory, let's look at actual results from real engines. Consider two identical Toyota 2.5-liter four-cylinders running side by side for 100,000 miles in hot southern weather. One was serviced with 0W-20, the other with 5W-30. The 0W-20 engine delivered slightly better fuel economy, less than 1 mile per gallon, but its used oil analysis showed higher wear metals over time. When both engines were opened, the one running 0W-20 showed mild varnish, while the 5W-30 engine's internals were noticeably cleaner. In another real-world test involving Honda's 1.5-liter turbo, switching from 0W-20 to 5W-30 reduced oil consumption and cut turbo bearing wear nearly in half. And to no one's surprise, Honda themselves recommend 5W-30 for the exact same engine outside the United States. This naturally leads drivers to wonder whether changing their oil grade will void their warranty. Fortunately, U.S. law is very clear on this point. Under the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, a manufacturer must prove that your non-specified oil directly caused a failure before denying coverage. As long as the oil meets or better certification, such as API-SP or ILSAC GF6, your warranty remains intact. Many service bulletins even acknowledge this flexibility. That's why countless mechanics privately advise switching to 5W-30 once your engine accumulates more miles, especially in warmer climates. They're not breaking rules, they're applying real-world experience to real-world engines. And here's something most car owners don't realize. Viscosity isn't the whole story. The additives inside the oil are just as important, sometimes more. two oils with the same viscosity can behave completely differently depending on their detergent strength, anti-wear components, and base oil quality. A premium ester-based 0W-20 can outperform a low-tier 5W-30 because it's engineered with stronger chemistry. This is why lubrication specialists often say the brand and formulation matter more than the viscosity number on the bottle. It's also worth clarifying one more misconception. The W in 0W or 5W doesn't stand for weight, it stands for winter. These numbers only describe cold start flow, not how the oil behaves once hot. A 0W-20 and a 5W-20 act the same at full operating temperatures, but in summer heat, a 5W-30 or 10W-30 will maintain a thicker protective layer that prevents mechanical wear during stress. That's why many owners in hot climates quietly shift to 5W-30 even when manuals list 0W-20 as the official grade.
W20 grade engine oil, and I do have plans to compare that very soon in a lab test video, so do share your interest in the comment section. I guess that brings us to the end of this video, and I hope you guys have liked it.